Hello and welcome. There's a couple of seats left over on the far side if you want to sneak in. Go ahead. So thanks everyone so much for coming today. I'm Noah Silverberg, one of the faculty here in the clinical area, and really excited to be hosting Dr. Brcic for this Coming Home to Psychology keynote lecture. She'll be talking to us today about extreme workplaces, I think is the way you phrased it, including International Space Station and the Canadian Arctic, and how people and teams in those situations deal with adversity and respond with resilience. So just before more fully introducing Dr. Brcic, I just want to pause and acknowledge whose land it is that we're coming home to today. As you probably all know, UBC sits on the traditional ancestral unceded territory of Musqueam people. It's been their home for millennia. I think we can also acknowledge that Indigenous peoples in Canada have faced more than their share of adversity, including at our hands. But of course, that's not their whole story. Also inspiring resilience, and I think it's the stories of and lessons from that resilience that we can also reflect on, and I think we're doing a better job kind of incorporating into our teaching curricula as well. So it's fitting, I think, that for this homecoming event, we're going to be hearing today about adversity and resilience, and also fitting that it'll be one of our own, Dr. Brcic, who got her PhD here in 2013, working with Dr. Peter Sufeld, as in the Sufeld Lounge, where you're going to be heading afterwards for drinks. As I understand, Dr. Brcic was part of a rock star cohort of graduate students who have all gone on to do amazing things, including our own Catherine Ron. Also, rumor has it that Dr. Brcic threw some epic parties during her graduate student days, and I bet at least some of you were at those parties. Show of hands? No, we weren't. We won't do that. Dr. Brcic is now an associate professor at the University of Fraser Valley's School of Business. She tries to understand how people and teams cope and thrive under extreme conditions, studying resilience and stress management and psychological growth. And excited to hear about all those things and how we too can do difficult things. Dr. Brcic.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you all for spending a sunny Thursday afternoon inside. If you know anything about me, I'd rather be out there. So we'll keep this fun, hopefully. I played around with the title of this event, the Coming Home to Psychology, and who was going to be here. So I'm going to take you on 3 different paths. You might hear some research, you might hear some grad school experiences, you might hear some parenting experiences, because that's where I'm at right now. And hopefully we come to some growth and resilience at the end, and hopefully you think you can do some hard stuff as well. I wanted to kind of introduce you how I got here. So I did my master's and PhD with Dr. Peter Sufeld, and he's not here because his grandson's getting married today. He was very sad that the 2 events had to happen at the same time. And from then, you'll hear this kind of idea of what Peter was trying to teach me to come up with different plans to do different things. He said, Jelena, we study very small samples. We do, you'll see. And he said, you study people that work in certain places. How else are we going to get you through into academia if that's where you want to stay? And so I ended up doing my postdoc at Rothman School of Management. So I study extreme workplaces, business schools like psychologists. Let's go there. So from UBC, I moved back to Toronto. That's where both my husband and I are from. And our parents were like, yes, they're staying here, they're back. But we liked the West Coast. And so I was helping somebody in my office. I was showing them how to apply for academic positions. The The job season was over. I've just turned down a job at Acadia University in the psych department because I didn't think I could start on another coast. And it felt like the stupidest thing to do. Who turns down an academic job, right? It just felt silly, like, why did we do this? But we made that decision as a family, my husband and I. We decided if we're going to go anywhere, it's back to the West Coast. It's not going to be to the East Coast. And I mean, it was lovely, but also, if you know anything about me, I would have been the mayor of Wolfville, Nova Scotia within about 2 weeks of living there because it's such a small place. Um, we ran into the selection committee like 4 times while there for 2 days. And so I was like, not a place for me. I need more people. Um, so I found out there's this job in the University of Fraser Valley in the School of Business. And I sent an email on a Monday morning and said, hey, I know it's past due, this job ad of yours. But here's my CV just for shits and giggles. I get a call in half an hour. It says, can you be on the plane tomorrow morning? All right, I can be on the plane tomorrow morning. And they said, you're giving a talk on compensation and benefits. I've never taken a business course in my life, you guys. I'm a psychologist. So I thought what Lara and Liz Dunn taught me, I was like, what do I know? I know money and happiness. I could do this. I know how we could buy time with money. I also know intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. I can make a job talk from this. Let's just do it. So in the plane the next morning, I wrote this job talk on compensation and benefits. There was some money symbols in there just to pretend I knew what I was talking about. And then gave the job talk, flew to a conference in Ottawa and flew to vacation in Greece. And then got a call in Greece to be like, hey, do you want this job in a month? And I was like, no, no, no. I've been taking a class in negotiation. And I said, I want to start in January. And they said, yes. So that's how I ended up at the University of Fraser Valley. I have worked in all these extreme environments or I've done research in, and I'll walk you through some of those specifically. But one of my children features in one of our 3 stories today. So I do have 2 boys, a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I also want to acknowledge the land of unceded and traditional territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and the waterways. I have recently gotten really into land-based whale watching, and we can chat about that over drinks. But I've seen so many orca and humpbacks from land, you guys, and you can. And I appreciate the waterways, and I appreciate the connection of salmon to the whales, to the bears, to the other creatures, and how plentiful, and understanding the cultural practices and how plentiful that can make our oceans and our seas and our waterways. So, so one of my children and the waterways features in one of our 3 stories. So what do I study? Well, let me actually the 3 stories. One story is going to be the research, the people that go into the extreme environments, the space, the Arctic, the local search and rescue teams, and more specifically, national search and rescue teams. Then I'll tell you about grad school and kind of what kind of strategies I had to use in grad school, because we're coming home to psychology. This is where my home was for psychology. And so I got to tell you about all the tears I shed and all the successes I've had in psychology as grad school. And then I'll talk to you about a sailing incident and parenting. That one's an interesting one. That one still has me. So about, 15 years ago, Dr. Phyllis Johnson, Dr. Peter Seufeld, we were hiding from the rain in Star City in Russia with a napkin. And we came up with a study idea on this napkin. And we pitched, by we, I mean Peter and Phyllis, not me. I was a master's student. They pitched this study idea to the Canadian Space Agency, and we were going to look at development of culture in space. We were going to actually do the first psychological study in actual spaceflight. The space agency said, yes, let's do it. Here's the funding for Phyllis and Peter, and I kind of tagged along as a master and a PhD student. If you can see what it says there, N of 14. And how many participants? 14 participants. Do you know how many years that took us? 9. I walked downstairs. I saw your sample sizes. They're not 14. And it didn't take you 9 years. So 9 years and a 14. Who the heck is going to publish that? They do. Trust me. This study involved a longitudinal design where we collected data over 5 time periods. We collect, because you guys, if we're going to get them, we might as well get them as much as possible. So we collected data before the flight, 2 times during the flight, and 2 times once they returned to Earth. I applied to do something similar on land. And lo and behold, the Canadian Space Agency said, here's $300,000, do this. And this is how I entered my job at UFV. Now, if you know anything about UFV, it's a teaching-focused institution. Research is just starting to be bigger, and we're just starting to hire researchers. And so I was a superstar. I've seen people get this grant on like a Monday and not be a big deal for them. But like, I was like, yes, I'm bringing the most money this university has ever seen. It was very exciting. And this study, we were going to go and pretty much replicate the same stuff that Phyllis and Peter did at space. We replicated this in the Arctic. So where we collected data was Eureka Weather Station, and it's the last manned weather station in Canada. So when you open your phone and you check what it's going to rain tomorrow or not, these guys every hour, on the hour, for 24 hours a day, walk out in the snow, release a weather balloon, collect weather data, pull down the weather balloon, go inside, enter the weather data, and you find out if it's going to rain tomorrow or not. So that's where that's coming from. They go up in teams of about 9 to 12 people. The rotations are faster in the summer because you can get there easier, but they're much slower in the winter. Here, this is my first 7 years of me as assistant professor, and of 18, 5 years. Now, once again, you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, Jelena. So I'm going to take a step back and tell you, in grad school, I did not do the sexy stuff that you publish in Psych Science because I couldn't get a sample of more than 14 participants in more than 9 years, right? So I just told you of work that took 14 years for 2 studies, okay? And so I had to step back in grad school and say, okay, I really find the work I do interesting. I think the questions are exciting. I think the people I work with are exciting, but SSHRC is not going to touch me with a 10-foot pole. They are definitely not going to give me any funds to do anything because this is what I study. Like it's not the common denominator of the population we look at. I'm not going to publish in fancy journals. I'm not even going to get accepted to the fancy conferences. So I have to step back and be like, do I like this enough? How much do I like this? And how can I market myself? I was back in business school back then. How can I package myself to be interesting to people, to organizations? How can I get hired, or how can I even publish such small sample sizes? So these are the 2 environments we looked at, and then COVID happened. Now, what happened with COVID is they stopped sending people up to the Arctic. A, they couldn't hire. B, they had to isolate too many people in different ways, so they would just leave people there for longer. Those people in the Arctic are hired by Environment Canada, and they're just regular employees, so they kept on going back. And so it was the same people. I couldn't keep on asking the same people the same questions. They've already participated in my study. And I went, what now? Thankfully, I have lots of adventurous friends who decided to push my safety limits, and they decided to go far out into the wilderness in BC. They decided to do things I would never do, and I happened to be their safety person. I was the person, if something happened, the satellite phone would call me and send me a text message, and I would have to call 911 and get them some help. So I went, if I'm going to do this, I might as well know the people who are going to go out and rescue you. So I reached out. I said, okay, BC has extreme environments, right? We have the ocean, we have the mountains. So I reached out to the local search and rescue teams, and I said, hey, do you want to do a study on growth and resilience and coping? And maybe give me your phone number so I can call you in case my friends get lost. And they said, all right. So because there was this lull in data collection during COVID, I reached out to the local search and rescue teams, and they were game. They were game to do this. Now, this wasn't longitudinal. This is a one-shot Qualtrics. Oh my God, I got to use Qualtrics, you guys. It was one-shot Qualtrics data collection. And look at my sample sizes. It's like 65 and 59. That's like triple the other ones, right? So here I am, like rolling in participants. It's very exciting. And so we're asking very similar questions across all of these environments. We have a positive kind of focus in all of these questions. And there's some of you that know me from grad school, the faculty, but not the students. I would always talk about data and looking at content analysis. So looking at data from archival documents. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's reliable, it's valid, there's procedures we followed. But I never got to ask the people in these environments the questions I wanted to ask. I never got to use the same measures that, Liz and Jess were using. I wasn't able to use it because I didn't get to ask anybody. So all of these studies, all of a sudden, I'm able to use the measures we all study about it, the measures we all use, the reliable, valid, questionnaires that all of you use. I'm now like with everybody else. I'm now one of the few. Now, life leads you down paths, and while doing the search and rescue work, I got approached by two women running an Instagram account called Women in Rescue, and they came up to me and said, "Jelena, it's all cool and dandy what you do, but do you know it's very different for women?" And I said, "What?" Go, "Yeah, okay, it's probably different for women." They said, no, it's different for women, and we want you to answer questions because you're not involved with us. So they said, figure out, and I agreed with them. I could be an objective person to ask a question in an objective way because I wasn't involved in search and rescue. I didn't have a hand in the game. And so two lovely ladies pushed me to apply for some funds from Public Safety Canada to do some work looking at women in search and rescue across Canada. And so I got this grant. You guys, what's that number? $350. It's like in the 500s now. We're closing it next week, but this is a national sample of women, and we're looking at successes and barriers within search and rescue community across Canada. And the idea here is to sit down with your organizations, with the national, with the provincial organizations, and tell them what they're doing fabulously and what they could do better. And so I let people in my life, like you'll see, that's my theme. I let people in my life, and I let my interests kind of guide me where I ended up going. So as I told you already, Peter drills this into you. People keep on going back to this place because there's something good that comes out of it. We don't keep on choosing to go back into scary or extreme or stressful environments if nothing good comes from them. And so all of the questions we ask and all of the lens we look at all of these environments is believing that, the prolonged exposure to these environments, which are not traumatic but are stressful, does lead to some positive gain, does lead to people some meaning making. It does lead to individuals wanting to go back and continuing to be in these environments. This is not to say that we don't ask the negative questions. We don't ask whether in search and rescue, there's lots of retrieval of participants, like knowing that the participant is dead and finding a dead body, or lots of suicides in the forest. They have to find them. So we ask about everything, but the lens is always, there is some positivity that comes from people being in these environments. So first question is, we can ask, is it stressful? Is it stressful to go to space? Is it stressful to go to the Arctic and live there for 6 months with people you don't know or you might not like? And after we have individuals complete, oh my God, I'm actually telling you, people completed a scale. It's very exciting in my life. After we have individuals complete the perceived stress index, we find out that on average, across many time points in both of these environments, they're telling us they perceive a low level of stress before they go, while they're there, and when they come back. There's a dip in increase in stress while they're there, but it's not significant. It's just, to the naked eye, there's a dip there, but statistically, it's not a significant increase in stress. And it doesn't go past the low level of stress. And so we keep on, you and I, if somebody strapped me to a ship and sent me off to the International Space Station, I'd probably be scared. Probably would not want to be in the Arctic. I love the sunshine and I love the beach and I love talking, and who wants to spend 6 months stuck with me and listening to me for 6 months? And so I find some of these things extremely stressful. I hate going up mountains, and so wouldn't want to do that either. They don't, when we ask them, is it stressful? They're telling us it's not that stressful. It's okay. It's low levels of stress. I got this. And we believe most of this comes down to continuous exposure to these kinds of situations, these kinds of environments, and training, right? If you look at a resume of anybody that's in the International Space Station, they've got 6 PhDs, 2 MDs, maybe they're an engineer on the side, and they can also fly, right? These are very accomplished individuals who have lots in their toolbox to choose and pick and choose from. We ask the search and rescue crew a single one-item question: how stressful was your last season, from a sliding scale from 0 to 100. And the land-based search and rescue group said about 33%, and the marine-based one said 23%. you'll see a significant difference between the two groups. And what's really, really exciting, and I can't stress how excited I am to tell you this, is that when I started as grad school, we didn't have the same scale in more than one environment. What happened is psychology would just be like added on to somebody's like geological study or somebody's engineering study. It would just be like, whatever, everybody can do psychology, just tack something on. People would make up questions. People would just choose whatever appeared in, I don't know, it wasn't Google they used back then. I don't know what search engine was used, but they would just choose whatever was convenient, whatever scale was convenient. So there was no consistency across environment in asking the same question in the same way. So before we would say, we think similar things happen, but all of a sudden, because we're going into a variety of different environments using the same method, we can actually begin to answer questions. Does the environment impact people? What does it look like? How does it look like differently? Is it the organization? And so I have learned a lot about search and rescue, land-based search and rescue, which is your left little logo there. They're a very organized association across Canada. Marine-based is very much an ad hoc. You have a boat, you can help, you go. And sometimes you belong to a Marine SAR team, sometimes you don't, but like lots of people help in the marine land. And so they also have a different profile of what they help. I've recently learned down if they think it's drowning, they're told to step down and somebody else comes. The land-based search and rescue to bring all the bodies from everywhere. And so there's differences in what they're doing. And so because we're asking these questions, we can actually learn about what the different impact is in different organizations and different environments. Now, I know you all know about coping. And in the past, when I would show you this, I wouldn't actually get to tell you, people told me they cope this way. I would tell you, I think people cope this way because I read all these diaries and I coded all these diaries. So I'm kind of excited to be able to tell you, well, I know because I asked. We look at coping. There's lots of different ways of looking at coping, but how I look at coping is, splitting them into some problem-focused strategies and emotion-focused strategies. And I don't have to tell you, I'm sure all of you know, but when we're using a problem-focused strategy, we're modifying the environment to remove that stress. And so while emotion-focused ones, we modify the stressor in some way or our feelings to the stressor. If I was on the way here and my car, the wheel of my car fell off, I could do a variety of different things. I could be angry at it. I could blame myself. I could say I always wanted to change a tire. That no, I never wanted to, but I know how to. I could just say, well, I really wanted to walk today. I can say this is a really great thing because I want to be late, so they're waiting for me. Those are all some like emotion focused strategies. If there's a problem, these are very extreme. I'm just giving you the extreme stuff. Or I could pull out my manual in my car. And I can start reading on how to change and put on a spare tire. I can call a friend. I can call BCAA. And if you tell them there's a kid or a dog in the car, they come much faster. So that's and if you tell them there's a dog and a kid, they come really fast. So those are some of the problem-focused coping strategies. And so we use the brief cope inventory because it's quick, it's fast. We're starting to use different things, but with these samples, this is what we did. It's a 12-item inventory, but once again, I'm able to use the same inventory, something we've used with people on Earth who do regular people things, and I'm able to use this across a variety of different samples. So this is just, we predict. And so if you go back into history and you look at what's been found in these environments, it's always been, well, we think these problem-focused strategies are more likely to be used. We've never actually been able to go out and ask. And so we are asking, and we are showing that problem-focused strategies are more likely to be used than those emotion-focused ones. But you can see that the SAR group is a little bit different than the other ones. And we kind of get to that. So when we break those down, we can see that in the Arctic and in space, it's almost a hierarchy of these. They're different numerically, but the hierarchy of these looks very similar, okay? And then you go back to, well, is it a similar people that are choosing to do this? And sometimes it is. It's actually people who want to go up to space are using these situations to train. Like we do lots of remote work to train, to show the space agency, this is like, I can do this. we see that they're actively doing things about the problem. They're asking for instrumental social support. So they're asking for actual physical help. They're positively refraining things. They're using a lot of humor. And so same scale, 2 environments, we've actually asked the people, and we're coming up with, they're using similar strategies in these environments. And this is just a simplified version. As I told you, remember we did things 5 times across different things. Different things changed. There's some demographic differences, but just for the simplicity of our talk today, it's similar. Now, for the first time, I could say, hey, I've used this in 3, 4, 5 environments. And when we look at the search and rescue hierarchy, it is very different. The problem and the emotion looked similar, a little bit different, but it looked similar. But now I can tease apart really what are they using differently in different environments. And you can see that it's almost flipped, right? Acceptance is the top strategy for both of the SAR teams, but it's the least used strategy in space. Emotional support is the top, while emotional support was at the bottom over here in the Arctic in space. We can see that planning is still up there. Look at where the humor is. They really don't use humor as a coping strategy. And so we have to step back and be like, all right, so space and the Arctic, it's a prescribed work environment. I know what happens every day. I go to work, I do science, I maintain the station, I stay there for a while, I go home. The search and rescue crews are all volunteers. So I don't know if you know this, but BC has about 3,000 experienced volunteers who will, at a drop of a hat, come and help you. If you're stuck in the wilderness, who do you call for help? What number do you dial? Anybody? Say 911. Yes, you dial 911. You do not call. Good job. You do not call your best friend. You don't call your parents. You don't try to find the search and rescue phone number. 911 will ping your phone and get your direct location to SAR teams. They can also send a message to your phone, and they can help communicate with you through a separate satellite system. So lots of people in our wilderness have passed away because they've called a friend or they've called a parent. So you call 911. If you learned anything, if you take anything away from today, it's call 911 if lost, okay? If you have cell phone signal. But we all have those satellite calling now on our phones. Haven't tried it yet, but it's there. Anyway, so these are volunteers. They stop dinner, they drop what they're doing, and they go and get you off a mountain, out of a lake, out of the ocean. They fly in through a helicopter, they hike up. And so they also are regulated by government bodies. And if there's an avalanche warning, for example, they're told to stand down, because their safety is important. And so acceptance makes so much sense when we start to think about what kind of situations do they approach at work, right? And understanding that I cannot throw myself into that avalanche, because if I cause another avalanche, not only is that person in more danger, but now I'm in danger, and I'm endangering my crew to come and help me. And so we can start teasing apart what the requirement of the job is and what the strategies, maybe what the successful strategies in those professions are to be used in those environments. Now, I promised you 3 stories. Grad school, man, I remember crying. My husband, he wasn't my husband at the time, he was just a boyfriend. But I remember him coming home, and I was lying on the floor crying. And he walks in and he says, strong, and I was like, I'm stupid. I'm done. This is over. I want nothing to do with this. I am just going to go plan weddings. That was my backup career. I was going to be a wedding planner, and which I think I could be really good at. Like, I think in retirement. And so he was like, well, I don't think you should cry and feel stupid alone. And I was like, what? You're not going to tell me I'm not stupid? He's like, well, you know that. But like, I don't think you should do this alone. So that started a whole trend of doing things with other people. And my coping strategy I always go to is my village. And so studying for psychology turned into two of my friends, John Seekan, he's in neurology at McMaster University right now, and Will Dunlop, who's passed away 4 years ago, we would make dinner. And then we would do statistics. And then we would walk my dog because we needed a break. And then at the end of walking the dog, we were not allowed to talk about school or work anymore. Graham would come from work because he used to sometimes work till 10 o'clock at night, and we would drink and we would just chat. And that was how I didn't feel stupid alone anymore. It was just like, all right, my people, this is it. This is what we do twice a week. We cook dinner, we walk the dog, we study. Many of these people you have to recognize. Catherine and Leslie graduated their PhDs when I finished my master's. And so I always had those people ahead of me that I could be like, oh my God, that happened. They're like, yeah, that happened to us too. You're cool. We got you. Or you know, Alyssa, she's now at SFU as well. There were a couple of years behind me. And so she would come to me and say, that happened. I was like, aha, it happened to Catherine and Leslie and it happened to me. I got you. And so that was my way of getting through grad school, of getting through the small sample sizes, of getting through like, I ain't going to get the SSHRC funding, now what? It was my people. It was coming up with strategies of how to keep those people close to me. But also instrumental social support. So Peter was such a wise, supervisor. He would often pull me into his office, and people, my cohort would be terrified of him. Like when Peter comes to the door and says, you're like, oh my God, am I in trouble? And sometimes he would just give you opera tickets. But a couple of times he would put me in his office. And one time he said, Jelena, why do we do science? And I was like, oh my God, I just started my master's. I don't know. Why do we do science, Peter? I'm terrified. He's like, well, why do we do science? And I was like, okay, to answer questions we don't know answers to. He's like, great. And what if we find out the answer is not what we predicted? And I was like, it's still an okay answer. He's like, good. Okay, you can go now. Like, it would be these like small instrumental lessons of like, get to the next step. This is what's important. Sometimes he once he invited me into the office and he said, all right, I'm going to offer you a cool project and you're going to say no. And I was like, what? He's like, you need to learn how to say no. You need to prioritize, and you're going to tell me if this project moves you to the next step or not. Okay, I'm ready. And he like really offered a cool thing, and he was like, you gotta say no. This is your chance to practice saying no, because you can't always say yes to everything. Because if you say yes to everything, you burn out and you fly away. And so these small lessons of, every answer is the right answer. It's fine. We are asking these questions because we don't know the answers. And it's okay to say no, and you should say no to things. And so he's also the one that said, all right, so remember the extreme workplaces? He's like, you can go to business school, off you go. You can do this. There's different ways of looking at you. He also sat me down and said, okay, you need the backup, because you ain't going to make a career in small sample sizes right off the bat. So is there going to be teaching? Is there going to be this different stream through business? Like, come up with a concrete plan of moving forward. And so having my people is what got me through grad school. You all have to find your own thing, or undergrad or grad school, but my people got me there. Now you ready for the sailing? This is the fun one. So last summer, I signed up my then 7-year-old for sailing lessons at Jericho Beach. He's terrified every day, but it's like the best camp ever. I get to hang out at the beach, watch him for 3 hours, and it's mayhem, but it's like fun, organized mayhem. I think it's fun, organized mayhem. He goes out into the harbor. It's like so much fun. I'm on the phone with my sister-in-law, and she's like, next year, I bring the cousins. We sign them all up for sailing. And we're like, yes, okay, cousins going sailing next year. Okay. So, summer 2025. Day one, we put all 3 cousins. The girl cousin, Lillian, is not pictured because she wanted nothing to do with them after the first 20 minutes. So we thought it was fun. There was 3 kids per boat. We'll put them all on the boat. Lillian left after 20 minutes and did not want to speak with them. So we're like, cool, okay, Lillian's got to go in a different boat. But we thought the other 2 could just go into this. It's a bigger boat. That's key here. It's a bigger boat. We thought the 2 kids could do it. Day 1, they do okay. Day 2, they do okay. Day 3, it's a Wednesday. I'm looking out and I'm like, oh, I think we crashed. So, double kayak, people putting pictures on Instagram, 2 adults double kayak holding phones. Our poor children crashed into them, flipped them over, 2 phones lost, 2 panicked adults in the water, and our kids being like, well, we were yelling at them to move. So I was like, damn, I didn't do clinical psychology. How do I handle this when they come out of the water? There was tears because the kids thought they were in trouble, but they weren't. Like, they were yelling, and these people shouldn't have been in the sailing learning area. Thursday comes around of that week. My son is like, after the first 50 minutes, he goes in the coach's boat. We think something's wrong with the boat. He's like, no, it was really scary. I didn't want to tip. I didn't want to do this. And he goes from 0 to 100. So we go through like, what's the worst thing that can happen? If it's Friday, it's your last day. We want to end on a positive note, get back on that boat. I'm sitting on that beach on Friday coming up with a title for this talk, because I'm like, Jelena, you could do hard things too. You can help this kid through sailing lessons. He did not get on the boat on Friday, the last day, but we came up with a plan. We said, we don't want to end things because of fear. I want you to choose something because you want to end it. And so we decide we're going to book him into a private sailing lesson. All right, to be continued. Another thing we looked at was this thing called post-experience change. So the idea comes from post-traumatic growth, except remember, we're not experiencing trauma. We're experiencing stressful events. And so we use the same items with just a change to a certain experience as opposed to a certain trauma. And post-experience change goes into 5 different categories: spiritual development, understanding there's new possibilities in life, personal strength, close relationships, and greater appreciation of life. Now, growth and psychological growth is different than resilience. Resilience bounces you back to your baseline. Psychological growth does more work. You do more work and you go past that baseline and you experience positive change in different aspects of your life. And theory says it's these 5 aspects of your life that if you go through stressful experiences and you figure out how they impact your life, that you will experience positive change. So we then went back to those 4 environments, and we said, hey, does growth happen? Does any growth and change happen in these environments? So in the Arctic and in space, yes, growth does happen. We found that in space, it was a very small to a small degree of change that happened, which kind of leads me into some of the questions I'm currently asking. Questions we're asking about how much time needs to happen between the events. Do you need to be done with this event? Do you need to be retired? Is there something to do with age, or is it something to do with what kind of experience you had? We found that there was a moderate to a great deal of positive change in the Arctic, and I think it had a lot to do with my very young sample of people that went up there. It was really interesting. They all just became really, really good friends, and they kind of gave each other all of these opportunities when they came back down to Earth. They didn't go to space. When they came to their home locations, they kept these fabulous networks. And I did interviews with them, and they kept on telling me, well, I got this opportunity because of somebody I shared. It was on my team, and I got this and I got that, and my career changed, and my relationship is better because I learned this with my friends back up in the Arctic. And so it's I think a really interesting mix of these people that had to keep on going back, because remember COVID, they couldn't hire new people, and the same people had to keep on going back and forming these deeper relationships. We also see growth and change in the search and rescue organizations. And once again, you see this difference between the marine SAR and the land-based SAR, where there's a smaller degree of change in the marine SAR compared to the land-based SAR. And I'm going to go back to that organizational change, and I'm talking to the 2 different organizations and trying to figure out, what could they do a little bit better to support their people a bit more. Now, what I'm able to do in the Arctic and in SAR is I have personality data, I have subjective well-being, I have affect, I have all of these wonderful things that I've never thought in my life I would ever get from participants. So I can tell you that there's length of time in SAR. So it's not age, but it's length of time in SAR, openness to new experiences, and low neuroticism that actually leads those people are more likely to experience growth and change. And so we can now we can start looking at, who should maybe be in these jobs, how can we help different individuals, when do they experience growth? And we're designing studies now where we look at growth at 6 months, at a year, at 2 years, once these experiences are over, to see if that reflection period is necessary. and to see how important that reflection period is. Now, I told you I didn't only look at the positive stuff. And so this is like hot off the press. We're still collecting data, so it might change. But we asked over 200 women across Canada about the barriers to them participating in being in search and rescue. And some of the things we find is what you find in other organizations is the work-life balance. Equipment fit is a big one. Equipment is made for male bodies. It's not made for females. A harness doesn't fit the same on every body. Gloves, especially in marine SAR. This is just for land-based SAR, but marine SAR, those survival suits are only a male size. And if it's a small female, she actually can't do her job because she can't get in the water because she'll also freeze to death. Also looking at, lack of mentorship is something that we're going to be exploring. Are there role models? Are there female role models? But other things that they list is it's still a male-dominated environment. They tell us that they experience pressure from other women in search and rescue. It's not just the men, it's the other women. The mom-life balance, that comes up a lot. It's not the work-life balance. It's like, I'm a search and rescue member. I become a mom, now what? So my idea is nannies for SAR, where the people who don't want to climb a mountain, nor can they, ski. It's just, I'd volunteer. I'll be a nanny for SAR. Like, you're paired with a family, and when that family gets called out to go do a rescue, you then go and babysit their kids so they can do the rescue. Like, I'm in. I'm going to pitch this at a conference in 2 weeks for search and rescue members. And there's also sexism from outside of SAR. When the female comes to the rescue, it's the people that she's helping that are also having, biases to whether she can actually do her job. But even though there are these barriers, and this is just a snapshot, and I'll look into this way more detail, the women in search and rescue feel like their overall experience is extremely positive. It's very positive, or extremely positive, and they do feel valued by their male team members. They do, even though there's all of these barriers, they still feel like this is the right place for me. I want to keep on going back to this environment, and I want to keep on being a member of SAR. So even though I do like to do a positive spin on things, this study is going to force me really hard to look at a different lens from the environment from different ways and the experiences from many different ways. Now, finishing my grad school, I ended up at a university that's not UBC, that's not U of T, but it's what made me happy. And it's back to that question. It's like, where do you want to end up? What do you want to do? I always loved my life and liked my work. And that's what led some of the choices I have made. As I decided, I think I could do a lot at a small university. I can create change. I can have an impact. I can be at every table that builds the university moving forward. The president Teams messages me often. So it's a very different environment than being at a large institution. And remember, I like my people. I like my community. My class size this is bigger than my classes. My classes are 25 students in third and fourth year and 36 in first and second year. We've done escape rooms. We have thrown charity concerts at breweries because I can get to know these people, these students at a different level than I could if I was teaching an auditorium. You want to know what happened with sailing? So we booked a sailing lesson for Sunday. I don't know if you remember about Sunday, but Sunday was very yucky outside. And I got a call and I was like, oh, they're canceling because it's raining. And they're like, oh, there's no wind out there. We have to cancel. And I was like, all right, we'll reschedule. But I'm giving this talk on Thursday. And the whole point of this talk is that my kid's getting back on that damn boat. So we need to reschedule for either Tuesday or Wednesday. So reschedule for Wednesday, which is yesterday. Bonnie, what was it outside? How was it outside yesterday? It was very, very windy. You guys, we got there and they were like, it's not safe to take them out. So then we have to reschedule again. So reschedule for next week. And if that doesn't work, we're rescheduling for next summer because they're closing for kid lessons by the end of September. So I'll give you my last conclusion. You have to invite me back in 15 years so that I can tell you, A, whether my kid went back on the sailboat, and B, I can tell you all the things I learned as a parent, because that's the one challenge I don't know if I can get. I mean, it is a challenge for sure. We learned, and very briefly, I told you this, that members in extreme and unusual environments do not necessarily perceive stress as much as we think they do. And this is kind of premonition on average across many environments on some single self-report measures, okay? Just keep that in mind for the next slide. And they do experience growth and they do experience resilience, and we are learning so much more by using the same method across different environments. For grad school or getting through some certain things, find out what brings you strength, what makes you stand up from the floor when you're crying and keep moving, and harness that. Use your people, use your environment, use whatever you need to kind of get through those hard things, because tomorrow is just a new day, and if you get through today, you can get through tomorrow as well. And stay true to yourself. As I keep on telling you, people are my thing. Like I keep my people close, and I value those relationships more than anything else. During one of the beer on the heads, do we still call them beer on the heads? No. Well, during one of the colloquiums, is that what we call them these days? I got asked, what is your perfect study design? And I giggled and I said, I think it was my second year master's, and I said, I want to do an in-space study where we collect data at many time points, like I think 20, where we collect psych and physiological data, where we get to do some stuff before they fly and after they come back. I want quantitative, I want qualitative data. And about 3 weeks ago, I was at Peter's 90th birthday party in the Suthil Lounge. And I got to, it's not media available yet, like I'm not allowed to tell you what I got. But I was able to hand in a contract, signed contract, that's gonna make that second year master girl dreams come very true very soon. So thank you for having me today, and thank you for all of these wonderful organizations here.
And I get to officially thank you. Is this on? So it was a wonderful talk. Thank you so much. And we have exactly 11 and a half minutes for questions, because I am instructed to end this at 6 o'clock, which is going to be tough because this was really exciting. Thank you so much. So Jelena can handle her own questions, but if she misses some, I will, and we'll take some from the chat as well. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for in the Arctic and in the search and rescue, and we just published some of the data in the Arctic, and we are just working on the data in search and rescue. So we didn't find a relationship between any personality variables and overall growth, but we did find relationships between individual personality variables and individual categories of growth. We did get the information very quick soon when they came back, and this is where we're thinking that we want to do these extended periods of testing to see if the reflection is necessary. Before we just took whatever they gave us, but I feel like now I can put my foot down and be like, no, I want long-term measures. So stay tuned. Yeah. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yes. Actually, the more stress they perceived, the more likely they were to experience growth. And it was the length of time in search and rescue they spent, not necessarily their age, that led to them experiencing more growth as well. So it's more stress, more time, more growth. Hence our wanting to get some longer duration stuff. But you expected that. Go for it. Interesting. We're building that study right now, Liz. So it's possible we can ask that. We haven't asked them yet, but it's definitely something that we can ask. And we are going to get the opportunity to do it 20 plus times, so we can throw that in ever so often as well.
If you could, with the model on the circle part, would you say it will help you make consulting advice for those companies on how to hire people who you look for? What would you say they should propose?
Interesting question. So because, I have so much time on my hands, I've just signed up for the certificate in organizational coaching at UBC. So I'm back at school, you guys. I'm back to UBC as a student. Because I've been invited to these tables and I've been asked the same question. And as social scientists, I don't want to make any sort of staffing suggestions. I feel like I don't have the language, right? Like as psychologists and social scientists, we're not told you can make an impact by offering these consulting hiring decisions. And because I've been at the School of Business and I see who consults and what kind of things they say, I feel like, okay, maybe I am empowered and so I'm back at school to get this language of how to properly consult. I know the science and I could tell you what it says, but I wanted to know what to say at the table with organizations, because no matter how many years I've been at the School of Business, I'm a psychologist at heart. I'm always a psychologist. So what I would tell some of these organizations, it's more of, it's not necessarily the individual. And I feel like this is one of those long-term questions I've been asking myself, and we all ask ourselves. So when I teach leadership, when I teach teamwork, there's no perfect answer. There's no solution to this. I know you all know how many theories of leadership and teamwork there are. There are as many as people studying leadership, because we can't agree what the recipe is. And so my suggestion, my consulting suggestion from a psychology point of view would be cater to the situation, cater to the environment, figure out what works. I can give you an average what works in these environments, and you have to figure out whether that environment matches perfectly and what strategies and training you need to put into place to make sure the people who are there make it through. And it could be like, I know we're talking about psychology, but it could just be like ordering proper harnesses, and that person will do really well in the environment, no matter what their personality is like. So but let me give you a psych answer. The openness to experience, the low neuroticism, the ability to use a variety of coping strategies, those are all predictive measures of who will do well. But the environment matters significantly. Yeah.
But with respect to the differences between individuals who experience positive growth or not, very talented situation. Do you think there's a difference in the underlying motivation that might be pursue these successful occupations?
Great question. So, yeah, great question. So we haven't, in every single sample we have, everybody experiences some sort of growth. So there isn't anybody that's been like 1, 1, 1 in all of these. Like there's at least some minimal growth experienced. Now we are currently doing a study of interviewing people across Canada on why they're there, on the meaningfulness of the experience. We're doing a qualitative study. We're trying to figure out, is it the hero complex? Is it the intrinsic motivation to be there? What brings you back to the table? Is it the feeling of helping somebody, or is it because I look really cool when I rappel off a helicopter? And so your question is very timely, because we're trying to tease apart some of those, the meaning making of why we're there. And actually North Shore Rescue, when I gave them a talk on some of the data, they also asked me like, why are some of us here? Like I feel like we all have different motivations why we're here. So we're going to try to, it's a little bit of both. I think it's more so the intrinsic motivation to help because you have a skill set that can help, but I bet you it feels cool to look cool. So it's, I think it's a little bit of both. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
samples that we took the cell before we and what we took in. So one thing I also find so sad is don't know why it's such an environment that is so isolated.
Mhm.
So we want to not go together, right? I was just wondering if you have the ability to have what like you're talking about focus, right?
Mhm.
I'm wondering what exactly those focusing is of the field that they hoping that
Right. Okay, so before they go up to space, they do like 2 to 5 years of training, right? Together. Sometimes it's the crew that flies together. Now it's not so much because they're not, but it used to be like you train a lot together. And so, but you don't just train on Earth. You train like you go cave diving together. You're left up in the Arctic. You go to these like Mars analog environments. You do things like that. You go look for geological samples. So you go to all of these isolation environments together. So you get to figure out whether somebody chews loudly. You get to figure out whether you hate how somebody like talks at dinner time. Like you get to figure out all of these things. You get to work out all of these things. It used to be in the past, but not so much right now. But it used to be that they would all live in the same city and all their families would be friends. And so yeah, you're socially isolated and you're going away, but you're going with people that you know really well. And also, you've been trained in all of these different environments. So just because there's a rocket that gets you there, you're often a fighter pilot. You've been in all these spots. So, like, yeah, there was a rocket ride to get you there, but now I'm still living in the same thing that, like, I could be a Mars analog environment, right? So they give experience. So the more experience they have, the more likely they're able to figure out how to deal with this. Right now, they have instantaneous connection to Earth, right? They can Instagram, they can tweet, or it's called X now. They can call family, like they can do any of those things. So as much as we think they're socially isolated, they're really busy. Like they might even want to be like, oh no, the internet service doesn't work today. Like let us be. So it used to be they were socially isolated. They're not anymore, and they might be going back to, because if we're going to Mars, which we are, and I'm hoping to inform some of those Mars crews, that's going to be a proper isolation, and that's going to be interesting to go from no isolation to like all of this continuous connection to Earth, to going to Mars and never seeing Earth. So it'll be interesting. Janet, I'm going to ask you.
You're going to ask me?
I'm going to ask you if I have time for one more question. Or not.
Oh,
actually
yeah.
can I butt in here?
You got
I
one
just
on.
heard that the food's late, so
Oh, okay, for sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Kind of like the coping slide, the question that was recurring in my mind, I was like, do you think the difference in the coping before the first rescue, because you mentioned how they were very different as opposed to those that work in the ISS or in the Arctic. Is it due to the fact that perhaps the people that work in search and rescue are more like their responsibilities are more for the medical or like life-saving, like situations where they're experiencing all of the more visceral and variable, as opposed to those that are Arctic or ISS where they're much more controlled environment and you don't have to deal with like, saving people's lives and dealing with death and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to
Absolutely, 100%. You hit the nail on the head. That is absolutely why, right? The Arctic and space are really a work. Like it's just a workplace that doesn't look like yours and mine. It's not the Kennedy building. It is the International Space Station, but they're still a work. While when I am leaving my house, I really don't know what I'm going to. I get a text message to tells me what kind of a rescue situation I'm going into. Is it a medical trauma? Is it a lost person? Like, what is it? And so absolutely, it's a very different. So when we ask these questions, we say, thinking back to your last couple of weeks in whatever environment you're in. And so it absolutely impacts what kind of last 3 weeks they've had. Yeah, thank you. It's a great question.
I have one, two, actually.
Okay.
Oh, good. In your marine sample, some of them had signed up for search and rescue, and some of them were just the closest boat nearby.
They're not as organized. So it's not always the closest boat. It's like they have an association with marine search and rescue, not necessarily always like it's beyond. Like for land-based, you have a day you're in charge. So for example, you have Thursday afternoon, I have Tuesday afternoon, so you don't get called any day of the week. For marine, it's more of like the area, because they're very area-based, based on who has boats in what marina. Because we live in a populated city, like Vancouver has its base, North Shore has its base, and like they have proper boats, and those are funded boats. Some of the more remote communities is just like I fish and I rescue.
I see. So there wouldn't be a difference in the sample between those who knew that they might be doing rescue and those who got pulled in.
So we do have some information on what their position within the team is. So we are going to look into that. Yeah.
And my other question is, what's your son's attitude to the rescheduling?
He was so happy on Sunday. And then yesterday, she was like, I'm not getting on that boat in the rain. And yesterday on the way there, he said, so I asked him, what does success look like to you today? Because I know what it looks like to me, but what does it look like to you? And he said, I don't understand the question. And I said, what will make you feel happy at 6 o'clock today? And he said, not getting off the boat. And I was like, all right, like that's a good measure of success for you. And then we got out of the car and he said, okay, I'm terrified, but I'm a little bit excited. And I was like, yes, that's all I want. I want that like ounce of excitement. I don't want fear to guide everything. And so when we got there and the coaches said it's too windy to get them out by themselves. However, the coaches can jump on the boat and sail and the kids can get a ride instead. And all the kids were like, oh, and what I also did is I signed up 2 friends who did sailing with him. So it's not just him by himself, because people are my thing. And so the kids were like, yes, we want to ride. And then 2 minutes later, the coaches were like, we're not allowed to take you out. It's really windy. Like, we can't even go out. And the kids were like, done, we're having a play date. And off we went to a play date. So, I mean, all 3 kids had somewhat negative experiences this summer. And all 3 of the parents groups were like, we're going to give you a positive experience. So, I mean, we got from terrified to some excitement, and I'll take it. And I understood what success means to him. So there you go.
Fantastic. Well, you can see what UBC can yield. We are so lucky that you came back and shared your time and your research and your experiences with us. And I know it's been really educational and inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.